Well, beautiful people, we are come to Season 8 Game of Thrones epic episode reviews, number 1.
Woohoo! Let's get this started.
I'm surprised I said all those things in sequence and did not fuck it up.
Well, you
Proud
said
of
it.
myself.
You said it very purposefully, so that's good. You know, it's always the first
Yeah.
try that's the best try thing. You know.
Yeah. So, Shalini and I just finished watching Season 8, Episode 1. Newest season Game of Thrones, first episode. Like, there's no other ways that I can say that.
Yeah.
Redundant. I want to emphasize that we just finished watching it.
Like we haven't even exchanged information about what we've thought so far.
Really haven't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I just made a lot of incoherent noises while we were watching, or just yelling at characters, or like smacking Morgan, being like, "Oh my God, you know, this is like the first time they've been meeting since season 1 or whatever." You know. So.
Yeah, she did a lot of that, and I sipped my scotch and giggled at the things that conjured up memories of times past watching this show.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, first thing that I really liked about this episode was they had a nice direct reference to season 1, episode 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they even included some of the original score, same music from that episode. The procession of the Unsullied with Daenerys Targaryen and Jon Snow going to Winterfell. So it was pretty cool. I think it established right off the bat, you know, we're gearing up for a really large conflict here.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, still cycling back to the beginning. So it's like this nice return, but it was also like embarking on something new as well, because of all these different forces coming to meet each other in this first scene.
Yeah, and that was kind of, I think, what characterized the whole episode. It's just people mainly just reuniting. And some of them are nice and heartwarming. Some of them are a little like, ooh, that
Uncanny,
person.
yeah.
Oh, you again? You know, it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
And some of them, it's just like the person who meets the other is just gobsmacked.
Yeah.
They can't believe it.
One of the things that was kind of interesting to see unfold was how they all interacted with each other, because I think a lot of that also happened in season 7, where like with Tyrion and like his whole thing, and Daenerys and things like that, like people meeting each other. And I think they keep falling back to this like thing where they outline right before they actually start talking to each other, like how they left each other the last time, as if like the character, like for example the Hound and Arya, like the Hound said, "You left me to die," and then Arya's like, "Yeah, but I robbed you first." And it's like, yeah, that's like a good way of like establishing, like for people who haven't like marathoned all 67 hours or whatever, like before the show, to be like, this is what happened. But I also felt like it was kind of, I feel like you could have incorporated that dialogue a bit better, you know? This is really nitpicking the meetings, but I just felt like there was that formulaic, like, "You left me to die," or like, "The last time I saw you was in a brothel," or something, you know? So yeah, I feel like that just kind of took me out of it a little bit, but yeah.
I think that they had to accomplish a lot in, what was it, an hour? Didn't even feel like an hour.
It was 55, well, probably a little less than 55 minutes.
Yeah. So they had to reacquaint everybody with everybody.
Yeah.
So, there was that part of it. One thing that I liked was it didn't get how do I explain this? One thing that I really liked was, as well, in addition to reminding us of how there's this grand and epic struggle that's coming, clearly, very dangerous calamity that's going to befall all of Westeros soon, still brought us back to the political intrigue and just the sick inner workings of the mind of Cersei, and even now among the allies in Winterfell, like there's still that there.
Yeah, I really like that part, actually.
Yeah.
Sorry, finish your...
No, yeah, but I was just, like I was just saying, I'm glad that the show is still incorporating that. Like it's not just wholly divorced from what it really made its bones on, which was the political intrigue. Because I think that really before the last couple of seasons, there wasn't really a ton of focus on like the epic broader storyline as there was the many intricate storylines and friendships and betrayals of that.
That's
like,
true.
Like thinking about it now,
Yeah.
we've talked about this series a lot in our recent episodes, and it seems like we kind of acknowledge the epic and grandness, but I think that's mainly felt when we are reading books as opposed to show watching.
I guess with TV, you kind of have to focus in on the characters themselves, so it's not really the grand ploys at large. Even at the beginning, I feel like a lot of the politics was between like a dialogue between two people or three people. It wasn't like this grand sort of, because that's the nature of scheming. And the closed doors kind of thing. But yeah, I think they kind of took that in sort of a different way to explore whatever the heck they were exploring after season 4, because in my opinion, after season 4, it went on a gradual decline, and maybe, I don't know, maybe with season 8 it might go back up again, but who knows, time will tell. But yeah, for sure, there's like this weird expansion that comes with books, because your kind of imagination can go in all sorts of different directions, as opposed to with TV, you're just focusing on the people right now, and you're only reminded of like the grander stakes through like the expressions of the actors, I feel. So like when they remember, like, oh shit, I threw this kid off a window and now he's like 16 years old and he looks like he's like dead in the face.
I'm waiting for an old friend.
I didn't get that at first, and I was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I didn't know who he was talking about, but I think the hooded rider was a pretty immediate recognition, right?
Yeah,
even before he was unmasked, I think it was pretty.
Yeah. But going back to the politics of this episode, I really like that whole nuance of, okay, there's this very clear issue that we all have to face no matter who the heck is a ruler. But it's also like this weird reverse psychology where it's like, no, but we still need a leader because the times are so perilous, so we have to do that first. But and then Jon Snow's like, who cares who's the leader? We need to like go and destroy the White Walkers. And then people are still squabbling over those little politics. And I mean, that's such big resonances with like today's issues as well, like climate change and things like that.
That was the first thing that kind of came to mind was if you wanted to do a comparison to a contemporary political issue for just as a thought experiment, really. But yeah, I like that they've kept in that they've made very apparent, like you just mentioned, the tension that still exists, and how even though they're facing a really menacing non-human enemy, they still are plagued by all their stupid human problems and emotions and baggage from the last several odd years of just constant conflict. So I think it was a good, like, overall it felt kind of like a warm return to a lot of these things. But I sense that they're gonna get into heavy duty action fairly quickly. That's just my feeling of it. I think that they've kind of implied it very heavily from the get-go. That what I mean by that is, for all we know, episode 2 is like they're fucking fighting White Walkers already. I mean, we have
and fighting.
Quite likely both, right? I think the biggest thing though in the episode that I liked that it was finally made apparent, but it seemed very quick and abrupt. Maybe I'm kind of half criticizing it, maybe I'm totally criticizing it, was the revelation to Jon Snow that he's not the son of Ned Stark, basically, and that he's also the king of the Seven Kingdoms, the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms too, which is very interesting. So, like, do you wish it happened at like a sort of grander moment? Like, did it seem anticlimactic? No, it didn't seem anticlimactic. It just seemed very fast.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I don't think that there has to be a big moment for it, but But I see what they did, where they tried to make the raw emotion of Samuel Tarly and having just been informed that by the person who killed his father and brother.
Oh my God. So awkward.
Right.
Oh, man.
Having just been told that
Yeah.
from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And then, you know, he's just determined to let Jon know what the truth is. And yeah, I don't know what that's going to spell for the relationship between him and Daenerys. But yeah, that's...
It's quite interesting. I'm excited to see, like, would that make Jon more distant towards Dany, especially now that he has to consider, like, he is a contender to the throne, and what if Dany finds out? What if Bran tells Dany? What if Sam tells Dany? All, like, literally anything can trip the wire here.
Yeah.
And make Dany explode in a burst of heavenly dragon flame.
Jesus.
So.
Yeah,
and Jesus.
I was going to quickly remark about the environment in the show. They made it, again, quite apparent. Winter is here. Really emphasized that the North is a frozen, fucking cold wasteland. Especially during the dragon flying sequence with Jon and Dany. It was very, very apparent there. So yeah, I think that they're showing us, like, hey folks, like, this is still the Winterfell. This is still the Winterfell we all know and love from the last 8 seasons of the show. But all around it is just snow upon snow upon snow. Where the battles are going to be fought between the living and the dead. So.
Yeah, it's true. It's going to be interesting to see the development of how much snowfall there's going to be, if there's going to be a drastic change when the White Walkers are closer. And speaking of environment, I was also very interested in the pacing of this episode. It felt very slow, but obviously since it's the first return back to Game of Thrones, it's the first new content, you're just enraptured by everything and you want to get all the details. And so like the fact that it was slow was fine. It was like almost like indulgent. You just had all these like long moments where you're just looking at the actor doing the character and, you know, like being in that moment reacting to something. Yeah, which was like a nice return, because I feel like we haven't had a lot of that from before. Like that's very like that's very season 1 and 2 kind of thing, you know, like slow movements within a scene.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I hope they kind of keep that, even though like all these huge scenes are going to come up, like with all these epic battles and whatnot. But
yeah. Well, they often have to, right? Because they have to have contrast. Because and there's going to be, of course, all these tender moments with lots of eye contact. And warm embracing and stuff. So yeah, I know there's going to be a lot of that, and as many people have pointed out, that there's likely going to be the deaths of at least a handful of our favorite characters.
It's going to be like Avengers, and like half of the population is just going to be dead.
Yeah, except they're not going to come back in the next movie. Right?
Yeah, exactly. This is the true end game.
Yeah, so I think that they're kind of, in a way, maybe buttering us up, or preparing us for, rather, that aspect of the season, which is definitely not going to be pleasant.
No.
It's going to be people that we've been invested in their story now for years, and then they're just going to come to an end at some point, violently, most likely. So it's,
I've heard that it's going to be bittersweet from the people who worked on the show. Yeah. So, true to Tolkien and the beginnings of fantasy, it's going to be that, you know, that 2-punch of it's gonna hurt, but it's also gonna feel good in a way as well. Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think regardless of anything, the sense that I have is we're all just gonna get closure from this season overall.
I hope so. Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Not like a Sopranos ending.
Can you imagine that?
Every time I bring it up, Morgan's face just falls into disappointment.
Jesus, yeah, I know. I know. Well, it's just the artistic intentions of the directors are, you know, always at odds with the personal tastes of the audience, and you know, many people tore apart
Okay, so those were our first impressions about the first episode. Seems like a lot of good stuff's happening and a lot of setup for whatever's to come. So, yeah, check back.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. Seems like a lot of stuff's happening. A lot of setup for other stuff to happen. Definitely makes.
That's a solid conclusion there. Okay. Yeah. Well, these were our first impressions about season 8, episode 1. If you want to check back for our first impressions for later episodes, we'll be here at the same channel and doing it every week until the end.
Until the end.
Until the end.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah. Can you imagine what life without Game of Thrones is going to be like? Strange.
Well, it's going to be like life without anything that comes to an end.
Wow.
Here's the thing, though. It's probably not going to come to an end because there's going to be box set after box set of the complete compendium. Like what we got for Lord of the Rings is what is going to come out for Game of Thrones. It's going to be 3 times the cost for sure.
Yeah.
That's a solid $40 for that.
It's going to be 108 hours of behind the scenes footage.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's going to be wild. But yeah, and then there's the prequels and whatever. So yeah, we can't even think that far ahead because we still got 5 more weeks.
It would be nice to be in my mid-30s and there's still the world of Westeros on television. So yeah, I mean by that time, who knows if what the book is gonna look like?
Yeah. Oh man. Hopefully it'll be out by then.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll do another Game of Thrones remake with the actual ending.
It's such a telling thing that people are like. I don't know. I know the hardcore fans are obviously dutifully following his progression through the novels, but I feel like people don't care that much.
Yeah, people in general, for sure.
Yeah,
I mean, they kind of understand that this is a totally different monster now. It's different creative minds working at it, and yeah, Morgan's just eating chocolate now. That's a signal the end of this talk.
Yep. Wrap it up.
If you like this episode of our podcast, you can follow us on our social media to get updates on our future episodes. On Facebook, we're at facebook.com/highfantasypodcast. On Instagram, we're at highfantasypodcast. And on Twitter, we're at podcast_fantasy. And don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube as well.